Rabbi Zach Kamenetz is the founder and CEO of the nonprofit Shefa, the first Jewish organization to create spaces for healing and self-discovery in community by integrating Jewish wisdom with psychedelic practices. He holds a BA in Jewish Studies from the University of Maryland and an MA in Biblical Languages from University of California at Berkeley. And he received rabbinic ordination from the Chief Rabbinical Authority of Jerusalem in 2012. Zach is trained in somatic psychedelic-assisted psychotherapy by the Hakomi Institute of California. Zach lives on Ohlone land in the Strawberry Creek watershed called Berkeley, California, with his wife and 2 children. On a personal note, as a researcher, there's a lot of stuff that I don't know, and I think it's very important to find the people who are wisely living the practices and experiences that we're trying to understand and to learn from them. I've had the privilege to get to know Rabbi Zach over the last several years. First, as an incisive and compassionate voice offering a Jewish perspective on psychedelics, and then as a collaborating partner on community-based research that's looking to understand and meet the evolving needs of the Jewish community. I have been repeatedly humbled and delighted by Zach's care, his knowledge, and his discernment, and I'm so pleased that we will all be able to hear from him today. Welcome, Rabbi Zach Kamenetz.
Good morning, everyone. I promised myself I wouldn't apologize for existing, so I think we should just get started. I do want to start with a little bit of a sad story, but it is the reason that I think that I'm here today. And that story for me begins with roughly about 1,000 human cells. When my wife and I got married in 2013, we soon after experienced a number of years of pregnancy loss and infertility challenges. Before that time, my spiritual life was very rich, very full, and quite dynamic, largely due to the powerful, overwhelming, non-negotiable, mystical experience that I had had when I was 15 years old, where it became clear to me for the first time that there was a God who knew me, and there was a God who wanted something from me. I would learn later that I would want something from that God as well. But it carried me in a very intimate and personal way for most of my life, until these 1,000 cells. When we first learned about our infertility challenges, it literally felt like my spiritual life was going down the tube, the tub, and never to be seen again. All of that love, all of that fullness and connection with this one psycho-spiritual trauma, it felt like it had actually never existed. And around this time as well, I received an email from a friend of mine who had been rejected from a study happening in Johns Hopkins because he had previously done psychedelics before, and they were looking for what they call psychedelically naive participants. So I signed up. I went through the process of actually entering into the study, and at Johns Hopkins Psychedelic Research Unit before it became its own center. And that is where I met Dr. Roland Griffiths of blessed memory. When I was interviewing with Roland, he told me that they had had a hard time finding rabbis who had not done psychedelics before. And essentially, the 4 rabbis in the study were the only 4 that they could find that had not previously have any use. And this was completely shocking to me, but I guess I was on my own weird God trip that I had not been noticing what was happening around me. Or potentially that rabbis, spiritual leaders, spiritual professionals in the Jewish faith and maybe others did not feel comfortable, did not feel safe disclosing these important catalysts for the reasons that they wanted to enter the religious care field, religious leadership. And so with Roland's guidance, I found my way onto the couch. This is me after my first session at Hopkins. I look quite comfortable. The beard is remarkably less gray than it is now. But and my two experiences could not have been more different. The first one was profoundly beautiful, overwhelming color, my relationships, my relations, trance states. The fullness of spiritual life came back to me in those 8 hours. And I was just full of gratitude. At that point, thank God, we had a successful round of IVF. We had a daughter on the way in this moment. And so I was able to kind of celebrate everything that had transpired and where I had come to. Thanks to ChatGPT, this is Jay Michelson teaching me how to do things. I'm actually able to give over a little bit of what I experienced in this moment. And just so you know, this is the map and not the territory. This isn't exactly it. But there was a very important moment in my first experience where I encountered this giant oak tree. I'm from the East Bay, so oak trees are everywhere. And I felt this pulsating rhythm of energy moving from one pole to the next, from the left side to the right side, red and blue alternating energy. And in that moment, I knew exactly what it was. I had the language for what I was seeing and experiencing and learning, that kind of noetic quality, that intuitive knowledge that we talk about in all of the forms that I had to fill out at the end of my sessions. That there was a need for me, the psilocybin teaching me, my body teaching me, the universe teaching me, God teaching me in that moment, that there needed to be, for me, more of a balance between the left side and the right side. In Kabbalistic terminology, these are two great spheres of divine influence. On one side, you have chesed, which is magnanimity, compassion, the fullness of life. And on the other side is din or gvura, strength, boundary, the container, but not the content, sometimes associated with the more negative or harsh aspects of existence. But it wasn't one or the other. It wasn't compassion saying, be more compassionate, be more kind, give more. It was saying, there is a flow to life that you are part of. And in that moment, I knew immediately there was something happening in my work. The tree was teaching me maybe my next step. There was also an understanding about where I had come from in my own spiritual autobiography, that there will be times of emptiness and there will be times of fullness, and these things are constantly moving. But in that moment, I also realized that emptiness was a very venerable spiritual stance, and I hadn't known that yet. For me, it was obviously powerful, but in my own spiritual vocation, in some way I immediately became more empathetic to atheists or people for whom this was not working, Judaism or spirituality writ large. I knew what that was like, and I could be with them in it. Not the full God love, you're my dodi, you are my compassionate lover, but there is nothing, there is void, there is absence. It made me a better rabbi in just about 8 hours. This is a quote of mine from the qualitative survey afterwards. It changed me in a way knowing that I needed to be doing something different with my life and my time and be following the gifts that I had been given, that I had received. This is very challenging, however, as maybe some spiritual professionals out there, maybe some Jewish religious leaders, that sometimes the leaders and the laity are not exactly aligned in what is important. This is a study that came out in 2020 from Pew Research. And at the time, at least for some segment of Jewish professionals, it was quite shocking to see that the Jews of no religion were increasing over time. 3% thought that their religious faith was highly meaningful, and only 1 in 5 Jews thought that their religious tradition was meaningful to them. So this became a hot topic of conversation. Of course, for me, it was very telling to see that the youngest demographic was also the highest in having positive feelings about their religious faith. This was 4 years ago. Everything that has transpired since then, I'm not entirely sure. We haven't followed up with these people. But we didn't get to follow up on anything because when COVID happened, all of the resources, all of the attention went to just keeping Jewish institutions above water. But still, for me, this was a little bit of a canary in a coal mine. What are we doing as religious professionals that is leading to this increase? Of course, people are living full, beautiful, meaningful lives without religion. That's obvious and clear. But this was a moment of soul searching. What about the ways in which we are conducting our business, the business of spirituality, the relationship, the ritual, that was leaving these people wanting to move on or find something else? There's another couple interesting pieces of data here from Jews by religion and Jews of no religion. It's a really weirdly worded question. Like, do you believe in the God of the Bible? Like, I don't think I believe in the God of the Bible. Sometimes, in some ways, but you're asking Jews if they believe in the God of the Bible. So the data might be a little skewed because of the strangeness of the question. But what is really interesting to see for me is even those who, by religion or no religion, they said in a very specific way that the belief of the God in the Bible is not something that they connect with, unless you happen to be Orthodox, which is also fascinating, but to believe in a higher spiritual power. Right? There is still that desire, that yearning to connect with something larger than ourselves, but they might be finding it outside of their religion, or they might be finding it outside of my religion. They might be finding it in different ways that we haven't been able to actually name or categorize or analyze. And so I took this to heart, and I just wondered, with my psychedelic experience and seeing all of this data coming out, wow, this is top 3, top 5 most meaningful experiences, but also Jews are not really interested in their own religion. How do I work with these two data sets? What can I do with this? What can I do with the experiences that I had? And so I started a nonprofit. I started Shefa, which means divine effluence, divine flow, divine abundance, as a way of providing more support for myself. First of all, I was taking my own medicine. But also, as I began to speak about these experiences more publicly, I received wave after wave after wave. This was also during lockdown. Of course, people weren't doing anything else. But the responses that I got from Jews around the world who, for the first time, felt like there was an opportunity to speak to someone in a public way about their psychedelic experiences, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And so from that, just seeing, like, oh, there's something that is untapped here. There is a need that is not being met. We started with integration. It was very clear that people did not have any opportunities post their psychedelic experiences, sometimes for 40 years, to actually begin to sift through any of the meaning, any of that holy remnant of those experiences for some kind of meaningful change in their lives. We also began to explore within our own mystical traditions, the Kabbalistic and Hasidic traditions largely, where can we find more about the maps of reality, the maps of consciousness in the body, within and beyond, that could actually help support Jews along the way if they're coming into experiences or if they're going out, that could speak their ancestral traditions or into their rhythms. What was so surprising was to see, and this is back to maybe Roman's comment, or not Roman, but to Roland's comment, that very often Jewish people using psychedelics, sometimes for the first time or over time, had a greater desire to learn their sacred text, a greater desire to be part of a Jewish community. and a greater desire to be interested in their ancestors. Where are they from? What were the choices that they made? What were the hardships that they went through? What were the conditions of their lives that led me to this point? As a rabbi, I couldn't imagine anything better for a Jewish person or any person who had an experience that asked them to want and need more from their tradition. I'll give just one story from my experiences as a self-ordained integration coach. A woman named Esther had an experience where she had taken 8 grams of psilocybin and was in a deep, dark hole for about 11 hours. And she had spoken to some people in the field, and what she had heard was, you were too stressed out. Maybe you didn't prepare enough. All of these reasons started to accumulate about why she had done something wrong. Maybe she should have gotten a scale, but there was a disconnect between her direct experience, which was frightening but powerful, and the advice that was being given. And so what I did as a rabbi, as an educator, I said, let's learn some texts about the supracosmic void. We have that. Let's look at that. And we learned some texts, but these are the texts that Esther found most meaningful over time. They come from the book of the Zohar, which is probably the seminal work of Jewish mysticism. And it says, when the concealed of the concealed wished to reveal itself, it began by forming a single point. This point ascended with all the lights, and from there it expanded and emanated all levels, creating a womb that brought forth everything. The reason that she connected to it in that moment was that instead of being the bleak forever of nothing, it was the dark cradle of something yet to come. She felt her mother's presence and absence in this text. She felt herself longing for motherhood. And this was a helpful tool from her own tradition to support her process moving forward. Just one more. This is so beautiful. The supernal womb brings forth and brings in all forms, all seeds, and all souls. It is the womb that holds all, from which all flows out. There's also another prophet, teacher of mine, Leonard Cohen. He wonders, why is this that Jews are so removed from the conditions of their mystical tradition, their mystical literature, their mystical expression in their bodies, in their music, in their souls? I love this line here, and it's about a 30-minute speech that he gives to some seemingly very uptight scholars of Canadian Jewish literature in the 60s. You can listen to it on YouTube. It's profound. Today we covet the pearl, but we are unwilling to support the irritation, the burning nucleus. And our spiritual life today has the exact consistency of an unclean oyster, and it stinks to heaven. I think this is like the Jewish version of Brother David Steindl-Rath's theory of the burning nucleus, the mystical core of organized religion. We are unwilling to support the irritation. We only are interested in the final product. How could we continue to support that divine irritation that seems to be part of our birthright as a Jew, as a human being? And this is a great line here. I would say categorically at this moment that in any junkie's kitchen, there is a greater contact with the spiritual world than any given synagogue on the North American continent. Yes. And still today, not all synagogues. How did this happen? How did we get here? Well, at least part of my family's story from Europe and Eastern Europe, part of that story is that there was a very concerted effort to have Jewish people remove themselves, like Peter Berger's self-liquidating theology, from the mystical and from the ecstatic, largely for political reasons. This was a time in which Jews had the opportunity to finally be protected as citizens of the nation state. But there were some conditions. There was a monkey's paw moment where Jews, at least in some parts of Europe, needed to look more like their Protestant neighbors. There needed to be, as was mentioned yesterday, decorum. Moses Mendelssohn, famous philosopher, theorist, he said, religious fervor that dissolves into unbridled passion is the enemy of reason and virtue. God requires neither spasms of ecstasy nor the twisting of limbs, but the uprightness of the heart and the clarity of the mind. Just another Solomon Maimon. I witnessed, he's speaking about the Hasidim, he's speaking about the Jewish pietists, the ecstatic movements, and just how destructive their practice is. I witnessed their wild dances and senseless screaming, all performed under the delusion that they were uniting with God. I knew better. It was the fever of ignorance, not the fire of holiness, that inflamed them. And this is the best one. Yud Lamed Gordon, Weil Gordon wrote, they roll in the dust and sing to the stars, their minds unmoored from reason. They call this worship, but it is delirium dressed in a talit, in a prayer shawl. I want to meet these people. I want to meet these dirt rollers. I want to meet these howlers. I want to learn from them. And my ancestors, these ancestors, even though in some ways it felt quite pernicious, I'm grateful for them. How many Jews did they save from physical harm or intimidation, from economic uncertainty that had happened for generations? Right? There was unfortunately this give and take from what they saw as a decrepit religion to a religion of reason and ethical monotheism. I'm grateful for them. At the same time, I think it robbed us of many important treasures that we have held on to for generations. And so, with all of the good research that is happening, all of the good work that is happening where it's happening, I do believe that this is the moment for us to take seriously, at least in my tradition and many others, to reintroduce these states into our religious practice. We have the opportunity of revitalizing individual spirituality, the communitas, and the mental health and well-being, which I'll speak about a little bit. That's a missing piece. And we can do this in many ways. As Leonard said, do it with sex, do it with whips, do it with fasting, just do it. And also with psychoactive substances. In the work that we've been doing for the past 5 years, we have been able to capture from people who have come to us for integration and preparation support, but also the work that we're now doing with breathwork and with physician-supported, trauma-informed small group ketamine groups, that the experiences that people are speaking about really have some amazing correlates with all of the many of the mystical states that have been around in Jewish mystical tradition for quite some time. Just to look at some of them, dveikut, right? This is the jewel of the Hasidic tradition, to cling to divinity, to strip oneself of corporeality just for a moment and be absorbed into divine oneness. When people are doing DMT at high levels, these are the things that they report. One of my favorites, right in the middle, Ratzo Vashov, oscillation, expansion and return. The rhythmic expansion and contraction, pulsing divine connection through polarities. People are often speaking about going in and out of these states and just wondering, how do I support that irritation of the coming and especially the going? Going, the coming? Yes. How do I come back in a better way after these experiences that actually support my practice? I don't have the tools. I don't have the frameworks. And they often go and find some neo-shamanic or entheogenic churches that have more refined systems. But I believe that we have enough of the core elements, the ingredients of this Jewish psychedelic periodic table to create an authentic Jewish psychedelic practice. The language, the ritual, for me, what's most important is the pluralism of experience. Not just that here is the Jewish psychedelic thing, but we have so many different ways and moods and modes that can be custom tailored to the participant, to the patient. It's not directive care, but it's supported pluralistic care. And what I have seen from my work, it largely falls into three categories. Here's what I hear people moving into most of all. And these are things that are not being studied. And so I want to speak a little bit about that. The most commonly contacted state that I hear Jews who are actually contacting me, we don't know much more, I would call Olam HaTohu, the world of chaos. These are categories and terms that come from a particular Kabbalistic tradition, and I don't think it's forced. I think it suits experience well, because they're general categories. But the world of chaos is undifferentiated divine presence, right? The all is one. The feeling of no categories, no names, no relationships, just pure consciousness. However, that pure consciousness, sometimes encountered for the first time, it is quite dysregulating. The world of chaos, you might think, like, how could it be chaotic that there's only one thing? People have not entered into unitive consciousness by and large in synagogues for the past 300, 400 years. So when they encounter it for the first time, it can be quite challenging, like Esther and even like myself. The Kabbalists call this all light and no vessels. On the other hand, there is Olam HaTikun. You might see that word tikkun from tikkun olam, repairing the world, being a good person, throwing your recycling in the right can, etc. But here is what is meant by Olam HaTikun is that there is a framework for understanding something that was previously not known. Right? Putting some of the pieces together, creating a vessel for the light, being able to name something for the first time in their spiritual life, in their family of origin dynamic, in their relationship to their body and their soul. That there's some kind of coming home in this world of repair. And then finally, tikkun hanefesh, this practice of soul retrieval. Sometime for the first time, Jewish psychedelic explorers feeling as though their Jewishness has been activated, has been filled. They have contacted their ancestors, their well and unwell ancestors. They have touched intergenerational trauma, and maybe they don't know what to do with it yet, but they're on the way to retrieving what is lost, what has been exiled, and bringing it back in. It's very powerful to see. But by and large, at least from what I know, from my direct experience, these categories are not well studied in psychedelic studies. They are not part of the iPad MEQ experience that I had on the couch afterwards. And I would like to encourage, as we move through this field and this continues to develop, thinking about more culturally specific measures for experience for various traditions to actually capture what is happening and not just trying to limit it to 7 or 8 factors of what a mystical experience it is, according to some. And so we need more data. And as Roman mentioned, we are embarking, we're about halfway through, at least in the quantitative, but we have launched a study with the help of Common Era to understand the attitudes, practices, and needs of the Jewish community in North America towards psychedelics. Right? There's so much anecdotal evidence out there. Hasidic Jews in upstate New York who are doing ayahuasca. Jews in LA who are doing bufo and on Shabbat. Like, this is crazy. This is crazy and amazing. But what actually are they doing? Why are they doing it? Who are they doing it with? And what do they need? What are the resources that would actually support, like the framework that I mentioned? What are the frameworks that could help support these experiences? Moving on. And so, would you please, if you have a Jewish friend, whether they are engaged in psychedelic work or they're curious or even if they're skeptical, we want you to be part of this study, especially the Jewish people, the cultural Jews, the communist Jews, the ethical Jews, the once-a-year Jews, the bad Jews. We need you to participate in this study. Let's get this done. So please, either if you are that person or if you have a friend in your life who is that person, please send them this study. We hope to be done sometime this summer. But what is the true Jewish psychedelic? I don't think that we have a continuous tradition of psychoactive use, but the rabbis in the Talmud, they know what the psychedelic drug of choice for the Jews is, and it's the Torah, not surprising. So this is in Babylonian Talmud, and there's a question. What is that meaning of that verse? And this is the Torah which Moses placed before the children of Israel. We sing that when we lift up the Torah and we're about to put it away. V'zot haTorah asher sam Moshe lifnei bnei Yisrael. But if you read the word sam, right, placed in a particular way, it's not that Moses placed it, but that Moses drugged the children of Israel with Torah, right? He was the first Jewish drug dealer. And so what does it mean? What does it mean that the Torah is sam, a drug? So one voice comes in and says, if one merits, it becomes for them a sam, a little Hebrew wordplay. The word for drug, sam, with a samech, sounds a lot like the word placed, sam, with a sin, okay, connection. If it becomes for them a drug of life. If one does not merit, however, it becomes a drug of death. Right? So it is not that all experiences are good. There are real dangers, and I know that we're going to hear more about the risks of this. But the rabbis knew something about that Torah and maybe psychoactives as well, anything that could change consciousness, there are different sides to what can happen. But amazingly, and I'll wrap up, this is as Rava, another later sage, said, if one makes a craft of it, it is a drug of life. If one does not make a craft of it, it is a drug of death. Forget the merit thing. Forget the luck. Forget the blessing. It is actually how you hold the thing. All right? There is no providence here. We have to be better trained. We need to be training spiritual leaders in the Jewish tradition and other traditions to be able to hold these profound experiences, the good, the bad, and the ugly, for their congregants, for their students, for their members. We have to train them not only in that spiritual counseling, a great paper like Dr. Peacock put out, the CERT framework as well. We need culturally attuned care in this moment where psychedelic use is rising. I think that there's probably 1 million, if not more, Jewish psychedelic users in America right now. How do we support them? I want to thank you so much for your time. I appreciate being here, and please do reach out for any reason, especially if there are people in your life who need this kind of spiritually attuned care at this very moment. Thank you so much.